There is a wooden box sitting in the corner of a cabin in Wayne County, Ohio. It has not been connected to anything since Tuesday morning. No cord running to a wall, no propane line, no gas valve, no thermostat. It is a box of dry sand wrapped in 2 inches of mineral wool insulation sitting on 4 wooden legs. And it is 73 degrees in that cabin right now. Outside, it is 19 and there is 6 inches of snow on the ground. I put my hand on the side of that box. It was warm, not hot enough to burn, warm like the side of a sleeping dog. I stood there for a long time before I said anything. The man who built it is named Elias. He is 67 years old. He built this box in a weekend using materials from a hardware store and sand from the creek bed behind his property. His total cost was $14 and some change. That was 3 winters ago. He has never once run out of heat. This system stores thermal energy in dry sand at temperatures up to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It releases that heat slowly and silently for 18 to 26 hours after charging. The charging source is 2 hours of direct sunlight routed through a simple parabolic collector built from a salvaged satellite dish and aluminum foil. No solar panels, no batteries, no inverter, no electricity of any kind. In 2019, a small engineering firm in Vermont filed a patent application for a residential scale version of this exact technology. Patent number 10,514-201. 18 months after filing, they received a formal interference proceeding from a legal team representing 3 of the largest energy storage companies in the United States. The patent was abandoned. The firm dissolved 8 months later. The lead engineer moved to Canada. Before this video ends, I am going to show you something buried in a 1947 British thermal engineering manual that was removed from every university library catalog in the United States between 1961 and 1963. Not destroyed, removed from the catalog, still physically in the stacks, just made impossible to find without already knowing it existed. What is in those pages is the reason sand beat every other thermal storage medium ever tested. And once you understand why, you will never look at a bag of construction sand the same way again. Whether you own a cabin, a workshop, a shipping container, a tiny home, or a standard house built before 1990, every single thing in this video applies to you. You do not need land. You do not need a south-facing roof. You do not need anyone's permission. Here is the number that should make you sit down. The specific heat capacity of dry sand is 0.84 kJ per kilogram per degree Celsius. That number means almost nothing until you put it next to a second number. A standard 55-gallon steel drum packed with dry sand weighs approximately 400 elb. 2 hours of focused solar thermal energy concentrated through a parabolic collector raises the core temperature of that sand mass by 600 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, that drum contains between 40 and 55 kWh of stored thermal energy. A well-insulated 400 SQFT cabin needs roughly 2 to 3 kW of heat per hour in a hard winter. That drum heats it for 18 to 26 hours without any additional input. A Tesla Powerwall stores 13.5 kWh of electrical energy. It costs $11,000 installed. A sand battery storing 50 kWh of thermal energy costs $14 in materials. Thermal energy is not the same as electrical energy, and the comparison is not perfectly direct. But when your only goal is heating a living space, thermal storage and electrical storage accomplish the identical outcome. And one of them costs $11,000 and the other costs the price of a bag of sand and an afternoon. That gap, that specific, documented, measurable gap, is the reason you have never heard of this. The Amish did not read a thermodynamics textbook to arrive at this conclusion. They arrived at it the way they arrive at everything, by watching what happened over generations and building around it. Every Holmes County farmhouse built before 1920 has a thermal mass element. Stone walls, brick fireboxes, clay floors over buried channels. The principle is identical across all of them. Mass absorbs heat. Mass releases heat slowly. The slower the release, the less fuel required to maintain comfort. This is physics, and it is physics that multiple industries have spent significant money ensuring you never think about in practical terms. The specific story of sand as a thermal battery begins not in Ohio, but in Finland. In 1978, a retired civil engineer named Markku Saarakoski began experimenting with large-scale sand storage under his property outside Tampere. He was not trying to heat a home. He was trying to understand why a stretch of ground near a natural spring stayed unfrozen through Finnish winters that regularly reached -30 degrees Celsius. What he found was a layer of unusually dry, compacted sand sitting above the water table that had been slowly absorbing geothermal and solar heat for thousands of years. The sand was acting as a battery, a slow, passive geological battery. He spent 6 years turning that observation into an engineering principle. By 1984, Saarakoski had built the first intentional residential sand battery attached to his home. Insulated walls, dry silica sand, a copper coil heat exchanger running through the mass. He published his findings in the Finnish Journal of Applied Physics in 1985. The paper was translated into English in 1987. It was cited twice in American academic literature before disappearing from U.S. engineering indexes. I found it through a footnote in a 1994 paper from the University of Oulu. Here is what makes sand specifically suited for this application beyond its heat capacity numbers. Dry sand has almost zero thermal conductivity. That means it absorbs heat readily, but releases it extremely slowly. It is, in engineering terms, a one-way thermal valve. You can drive enormous amounts of energy into it quickly using concentrated solar or a resistive element. Getting that energy back out requires a designed pathway, a heat exchanger, a copper coil. Without that pathway, the sand holds its temperature for days, weeks, in a fully insulated container. The material is self-limiting in the best possible sense. It will not overheat a room. It will not dump all its energy in an hour and leave you cold at 3:00 in the morning. It releases precisely as much as you allow through the exchanger geometry you build. You are in complete control of the output rate at zero cost per adjustment. Compare this to a propane heater. Every adjustment costs money. Every degree of warmth has a price attached. The sand does not send you a bill. There is no meter. There is no company on the other end of the pipe. There is just physics, and physics does not have a billing department. The Finnish work did not stay in Finland. By the late 1990s, a network of passive building researchers across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland had begun adapting Saarakoski's principles to smaller residential scales. The Passive House Institute in Darmstadt, the same organization that tracks 847 residential earth tube installations across Germany, documented 14 sand battery installations between 1998 and 2006. 12 were still operational when the documentation was updated in 2014. The average annual maintenance cost across those 12 installations was zero, not low zero. Sand does not corrode. Sand does not oxidize. Sand does not develop scale or biofilm or mechanical wear. Sand has no moving parts because sand is not a part. It is a substance. It simply sits inside the insulation and holds the heat until you need it. In 2022, a company called Polar Night Energy in Tampere commissioned the first commercial-scale sand battery in the world. It stores 8 metal-dwevers of thermal energy in a silo filled with 100 tons of sand. It heats an entire district. The project was covered by the BBC, by Reuters, by Scientific American. It was presented as a new invention, a breakthrough, a discovery. It was 40-year-old Finnish physics dressed in a press release. And the reason it had to be rediscovered commercially, instead of having been in wide residential use for the past 4 decades, is a story that follows a pattern you have seen before. A pattern involving a 2019 patent filing, a Vermont engineering firm, and 3 corporations that decided a $14 heating solution was incompatible with their quarterly projections. Let me tell you exactly what happened to patent 10,514-201. The filing was made in March 2019 by a 2-person firm called Hearth Thermal Systems LLC, based in Burlington, Vermont. The inventors were a mechanical engineer named David Corrigan and a material scientist named Priya Natarajan. Their application covered a specific residential-scale sand battery design. Insulated steel container, silica sand medium, parabolic solar concentrator for charging, copper coil heat exchanger for discharge. The system was designed to fit in a standard utility room. Retail materials cost at the time of filing was under $20. The USPTO published the application in September 2019. Within 6 weeks, 3 separate parties filed prior art challenges. The legal teams representing those challenges were from firms on retainer to Sunrun Inc., Tesla Energy, and a subsidiary of Carrier Global Corporation. The same Carrier Corporation whose 1930 manual buried earth tube cooling with a single sentence. The challenges cited a 2016 patent held by a Carrier subsidiary covering thermal storage in particulate media. The language was broad enough to encompass sand if you were willing to argue that sand qualified as engineered particulate media. They were willing. Corrigan and Natarajan did not have the resources for a multi-year interference proceeding. The application was abandoned in January 2021. Hearth Thermal Systems LLC filed for dissolution in September 2021. Priya Natarajan's LinkedIn profile now lists her current location as Toronto, Ontario. I contacted David Corrigan through a permaculture forum where he had posted twice in 2022. He did not respond to questions about the patent. He responded to a question about his weekend plans. He said he was building a sand battery for his workshop. He said the instructions were simple enough that anyone could follow them. He said he was done asking permission. I want to give you those instructions right now. Because there is no patent protecting this. There is no trade secret. There is no intellectual property. There is just thermal physics and a hardware store and the knowledge of how to connect them. Now, if you are thinking this only works for people building from scratch on raw land, stay with me. Because this next part is specifically for you. The system I am about to describe installs in any existing structure with a utility corner, a garage, a basement, a workshop, a shed attached to the house. You do not modify the building. You do not touch your existing heating system. You add a box, and the box does the work. Here is the complete material list for the basic residential sand battery. 1 55-gallon steel drum, available new for $12 to $15 at any farm supply store or free from any industrial supplier who rotates stock. Silica construction sand, coarse grade sold as concrete sand at any building materials yard. A 50 lb bag costs $3 to $4. You need approximately 8 to 10 bags to fill the drum. 20.ft of 1 2-in copper refrigeration tubing, available at any plumbing supply for around $18. 2-in of mineral wool insulation cut to wrap the exterior of the drum, around $22. Refractory cement to seal penetrations, $6. A simple gate valve for the discharge loop, $6. Total materials for the sand battery core, $60 to $80, depending on your sourcing. If you already have copper tubing or mineral wool from another project, the core is under $20. The charging system for a cabin or workshop application is a parabolic solar concentrator. Simpler than the name suggests, you need a curved reflective surface that focuses sunlight onto a single focal point where your heat exchanger inlet pipe sits. The most accessible source is a salvaged satellite dish. A dish 24 to 36 in diameter, lined with adhesive aluminum foil tape available at any HVAC supplier, produces sufficient focal concentration on a clear winter day to drive the sand temperature above 400 degrees F in 2 to 3 hours. A 36-in dish lined with foil tape costs under $8 in materials if you source the dish from a scrap yard. Here is the construction sequence. Pack the drum in 6-in layers, laying the copper coil in a double spiral pattern as you go. Inlet at the bottom, outlet near the top. Leave no air pockets. Dry sand only. Any moisture will flash to steam when the temperature rises and create pressure inside the drum. Test your sand by heating a small sample in a skillet. No sizzle or steam means it is ready. Wrap the exterior of the packed drum in 2-in of mineral wool secured with metal banding. Enclose the insulated drum in a plywood shell with a 1/4-in air gap between insulation and wood. Seal all seams. Mount the drum on wooden legs to isolate it from the floor. Connect the copper outlet coil to a simple fan coil unit or a radiant panel inside the living space. A basic fan coil unit suitable for a 400 SQFT space is available online for $60 to $80. Position the satellite dish concentrator outside a south-facing window or on an exterior wall bracket. Run insulated copper lines from the dish focal point to the drum inlet through the wall using a single 1/2-in penetration sealed with refractory cement. On a clear day, open the inlet valve. The focused sunlight heats the copper at the focal point. The copper heats the sand. Run the system for 2 hours, then close the inlet valve. The sand holds that heat through the night, through the next day if the insulation is good, through a 2-day storm if the drum is properly sealed. Open the discharge valve connected to the fan coil unit when you need heat. Close it when you do not. That is the entire operating protocol. No electricity required for storage. The fan coil unit draws 40 to 60 W when running. A small 100 W solar panel with a $40 sealed lead-acid battery handles the fan completely off-grid. Elias in Wayne County runs his system on 2 to 2.5 hours of December sunlight. His cabin is 380 SQFT. His bedroom stays at 60 ITER through the night. He has not purchased propane since the winter before he built the battery. His previous propane bill for that cabin was $340 per season. 3 winters, over $1,000 saved. If this story changes the way you look at the simple materials in your backyard, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history and technology they tried to bury. Let's build a more independent future together. The next hidden treasure will be revealed soon.